Hi there, everyone, and welcome to the Daily Gardener, and thank you for listening. I'm your host, Jennifer Evelyn. It's July 28th. Today we celebrate the botanist and writer who published the first book about salad, and we'll also learn about the horticulturist whose life was cut short on this day when the steamship he was on caught fire and sank. We'll celebrate the man who helped generations of people fall in love with ornithology, and we'll also hear some garden poetry that features women. We grow that garden library with a book about creating a pollinator victory garden by having a garden that's healthy, diverse, and chemical-free. And then we'll wrap things up with a glimpse into a Maine garden on this day in 2011. But first, let's catch up on some greetings from gardeners from around the world and today's curated news. Well, first up is this post that I got from Teresa M. in Michigan, and she sent me this great article from Taste of Home, and it's called 9 Pro Tips for Making Restaurant-Quality Salads at Home. And I love that Teresa sent me this because it's a great reminder to all of us that it's good to get creative with our garden harvest. In fact, right about now, you can feel like you've been doing the same old thing over and over again, and it's nice to mix things up a little bit. Anyway, this article came out in March of 2019. It was written by Lindsay Madison, and the article shares a chef's secrets to making healthy, clean-eating salads that look amazing and taste great. And I'm going to just roll through them here very quickly. So the first tip is that fat is flavor. And this isn't just about the oil in the salad. We're talking about avocado, nuts, seeds, cheeses. And it's those additional fats that really help carry the flavor of the salad and make it exceptionally good. Now, one way that you can make your salads more filling is to add protein. This can be your standard grilled chicken or bacon, but you can also think outside the box, maybe by adding smoked salmon or some steak or egg. And if you're vegetarian, think beans, lentils, edamame, quinoa, and so forth. Now, sometimes all your salads need is a new salad dressing. And the chef in this article says you can't beat homemade. And then she offers this really great suggestion, which is if you want to come up with something new and lively, consider pureeing your favorite fruits and vegetables. So think about pureeing berries or avocado, and then adding in herbs or mustard or honey for flavoring. And of course, if you're a fan of creamy dressings, you're going to want your base to start with things like mayonnaise, yogurt, or sour cream. Finally, the other great tip in this article is that we should all be tossing our salads. That's a restaurant best practice. By pre-tossing your salad, every leaf gets coated and everything tastes perfectly seasoned. And the article says you're not doing yourself any favors just by drizzling dressing on your greens. Dirty up an extra bowl, toss them up right before you're ready to serve. It's a guaranteed crowd pleaser. So there you go, John. You're going to be tossing the salads here. It's going to be another job for you in addition to taking out the garbage and walking the dog. You can get the family salad ready by tossing it in the big bowl. So there you go. Anyway, thank you for Teresa for sharing that article. I loved all those tips, and there's actually a few more in there that I didn't go through right now. So if you're interested in reading this article, I'll share it in the Facebook group for the show, and then all you need to do is search for the word salad, and this post will pop up. And then next is a happy birthday greeting from Nell in Fargo, North Dakota, to her husband, Bill. And she says, I'd like to wish this big guy a happy 65th birthday. He just spent all weekend planting trees and shrubs in our new front yard. He's a keeper. Well, yes, he is. Happy birthday. And hopefully you get a little bit of time off from your landscaping duties so that you can kick back and celebrate your birthday. All right, now if you'd like to participate in the Gardener Greetings segment, all you need to do is send your garden pictures, stories, birthday wishes, and so forth to me at jennifer@thedailygardener.org. And to listen to the show while you're at home, just ask Alexa or Google to play the Daily Gardener podcast. It's just that easy. Here's today's curated news. Well, today's featured article is from the Mental Health Foundation in Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland. And the title of the post caught my attention because it's called Thriving with Nature, a guide for everyone, making the most of natural spaces for our mental health and well-being. Here's an excerpt. New and exciting research is happening all the time that adds to our understanding of how our natural environment affects the health of our bodies and minds. And the reasons why time in nature has this effect on us are complex and are still being understood. But the benefits are often related to how our senses connect us to the environment around us, from the shapes in nature that we see to the scents that the trees give off, and the soft fascination that nature can stimulate, which helps our minds rest. Now, what I especially enjoyed about this post is that they shared all kinds of social media testimonies. One supporter on Instagram said, "Sitting outside in nature calms me so much. Gardening makes me feel healthier, inspired. The rain calms me. The smells, the sounds of the birds, the animals, the flowers, the wind, watching the clouds float by, it all calms me." And I love what this other supporter wrote. She said, "Breathing fresh air and going on a long walk in nature, I find really helps me. It's like the trees have secret powers." This post has marvelous tips for how you can spend more time in green spaces, how you can find nature if you're in a city, how to stay active, how to be more relaxed and mindful, courtesy of spending more time in nature, and how you can safely connect with others when you're outside. Now, again, this post is called Thriving with Nature, and I'll share it in the Facebook group for the show. So if you'd like to read the post in detail, and it has so many suggestions and ideas, it's a really wonderful guide. All you need to do is search for the word nature, and this post will pop up. All right, that's it for today's gardening news. Now, if you'd like to check out any of my curated news articles or blog posts for yourself, you're in luck because I share all of it in the listener community for the show. It's in the free Facebook group called the Daily Gardener Community. So there's no need to take notes or search for links. The next time you're on Facebook, just search for Daily Gardener Community and request to join. I'd love to meet you in the group. Here's today's brevities. Well, today in 1662, the English gardener and writer John Evelyn recorded in his diary that he met with the Dowager Queen, Henrietta Maria. John kept a detailed diary for 66 years, and he had a devoted passion for gardening, and as a result, his diary has been a tremendous treasure for garden historians over the years. And here's a little-known fact about John Evelyn. He was the very first garden author to publish a book about salads, or sallets, as they were spelled at the time, S-A-L-L-E-T-S. And listen to the benefits of eating salad as described by John. By reason of its soporiferous quality, lettuce still continues to be the principal foundation of salads, which cool and refresh and have beneficial influences on morals, temperance, and chastity. Well, we've come a long way from John Evelyn's description of salads to the description of salads that I talked about at the beginning of the show. Now we're just worried about making them taste good. In any case, John used the word soporiferous, which means inducing or tending to induce sleep. And that's something most people don't realize. But here, John is referring to the fact that some lettuce secretes lactucarium, which is a milky fluid that's found at the base of some lettuce stems. And if you've been harvesting lettuce, I know you know what I'm talking about. Now, that milky substance is actually known as lettuce opium because it has a sedative and pain-relieving property to it. And it's also been reported to promote a mild sensation of euphoria. So keep that in mind if you decide to eat more salad from your garden this week. Now, there are two quotes of John Evelyn's that I found particularly interesting. The first one is, "The gardener's work is never at an end. It begins with the year and continues to the next. He prepares the ground, and then he plants, and then he gathers the fruits." Well, from that quote alone, you can see that John was a very dedicated year-round gardener. But he obviously loved it, as you can hear in this next quote. "Gardening is a labor full of tranquility and satisfaction, natural and instructive, and as such contributes to the most serious contemplation, exercise, health, and longevity." Wow, we are having a lot of full circle moments in today's show because that completely supports everything we just talked about in that Thriving with Nature guide. Now, there's one story about John Evelyn that I always associate with him, and it's a little jaw-dropping. So I'm giving you fair warning, but here goes. Oh, and before I tell you, keep in mind how hard John worked at gardening. It was really a year-long passion for him. He really appreciated the amount of work that a garden requires. So keep that in mind as I tell you this little story about John Evelyn. So the year is 1698, and by this time, John had owned his estate for 40 years. Everyone who knew it said it was magnificent, both inside and out. It was decorated to the nines, and of everything that he owned, John's garden was truly his pride and joy. But that year, 1698, the Russian Tsar Peter the Great brought an entourage of 200 people to England to visit William III. In a gesture of hospitality, William volunteered John's home to host the Tsar and all of his people during their visit. So John and his wife graciously moved out to give the Tsar his privacy. Well, it wasn't long before John's servants began sending him urgent messages, begging him to return. And when John came home, he walked into a nightmare. The whole estate had been trashed. Priceless paintings had served as dartboards. His floors were ruined. Windows were smashed. And even the garden was destroyed. The servants told how the 6'8" Tsar, I didn't realize he was that tall, had played games with his friends where they put him in one of John's wheelbarrows, and then they raced him through the garden beds, crashing into walls and trees and hedges. It was a complete and total disregard for the sanctity of John's garden. For 20 years, John had nursed along a hedge of holly that turned into a glorious living wall. It was ruined. The party even managed to knock down part of the stone wall that surrounded the garden. Well, it must have been a scene akin to the movie Animal House. You can imagine how John felt. He immediately sent word to the king about what happened, and then arrangements were made straight away to move the Tsar and his party to other lodgings. King William settled with John to have his property restored. His home needed to be gutted and rebuilt from the floors up. Now, John Evelyn was 78 years old when this happened to him, and I'm sure that there was no amount of restitution that could restore the years of love that John had spent in his garden. John lived for another 8 years before dying in 1706. And today is the anniversary of the tragic death of the horticulturist and writer Andrew Jackson Downing, who died on this day in 1815. Andrew was the author of The Fruits and Fruit Trees of America. It came out in 1845. He also served as the editor of a magazine called The Horticulturist. Regarded as one of the founders of American landscape architecture, Andrew used his work in the Horticulturist magazine as a platform for advancing his pet causes. It was Andrew who first came up with the idea for a New York park. In fact, Andrew's dream became the park we know today, Central Park. Andrew also advocated for individual states to create schools devoted to agriculture. And as we know, that hope became a reality as well. In 1846, the National Mall in Washington, D.C. was pretty run down and neglected, and it fell to Andrew to devise plans to revive the space. Now, originally, when the Frenchman Pierre-Charles L'Enfant designed the mall in 1791, he envisioned a grand avenue. In sharp contrast, Andrew's vision was simple. Not a fan of formal European gardens, Andrew wanted to create what he called a public museum of living trees and shrubs. Instead of a grand avenue, Andrew designed 4 separate parks that were connected by curving walkways and featured many different trees. It's unfortunate that Andrew's plans were never fully funded or carried out. In the summer of 1852, Andrew boarded a steamship called the Henry Clay. At some point, the steamship got into a race with another boat called the Armenia. When the Henry Clay began to overheat, a fire broke out in the engine room. And coincidentally, a former girlfriend of Andrew's also happened to be on board the Henry Clay on that fateful day. As passengers rushed to escape the flames by jumping in the water, some began to drown. Andrew jumped in the water to save his old love, but sadly, her panic caused them both to go under. Now, before Andrew attempted to save his old paramour, he was one of the men who quickly threw some deck chairs off the boat. The thinking was that the chairs could be used as flotation devices. As fate would have it, Andrew's wife Carolyn survived the disaster by holding on to a deck chair. And when the ordeal was all over, many friends tried to comfort Carolyn by insinuating that she was likely saved by one of the chairs that Andrew had thrown into the water. But this sentiment was small consolation to her, given that she had just lost her husband as he was busy trying to save an old love. Andrew Jackson Downing was just 36 years old when he died on this day 205 years ago. And today is the anniversary of the death of Roger Tory Peterson of Peterson's Field Guide to Birds fame. He was born in 1908, and he died on this day in 1996. A son of Jamestown, New York, Roger helped new generations of people fall in love with ornithology. He not only wrote the guides, but Roger also illustrated them. And he's remembered for bringing the natural world to the masses in the 20th century. Roger admired the gumption of the common starling. He felt blue jays had, quote, a lot of class. And he said that the house sparrow was, quote, an interesting darn bird. Roger once famously described a purple finch as a sparrow dipped in raspberry juice. And when it came to the Audubon oriole, Roger quipped that its song was like a boy learning to whistle. And you might be wondering, what was Roger Tory Peterson's favorite bird? The king penguin. Here are some famous Peterson quotes that I thought you would enjoy. Few men have souls so dead that they will not bother to look up when they hear the barking of wild geese. And birds have wings. They're free. They can fly where they want, when they want. They have the kind of mobility many people envy. And then this one, birds are indicators of the environment. If they're in trouble, we know we'll soon be in trouble. And finally, the authorized biography of Peterson, called The World of Roger Tory Peterson, is worth a read if you want to get a hold of a copy. I included it in today's show notes. And right now, you can get a used copy for 36 cents. I've never seen a book that low. And it's a fantastic book. So if you want to use that link to support the show, just head on over to thedailygardener.org. Find today's post on the homepage, then click on it and read to find the link. It's that easy. In Unearthed Words, today's words feature women and the garden. This first selection is from 500 Points of Good Husbandry. It was written in 1573 by Thomas Tusser, the English poet and farmer. He writes, "In January, the housewife should be busy planting peas and beans and setting young rose roots. During March and April, she will work from morning to night, sowing and setting her garden or plot to produce the crops of parsnip, beans, and melons, which will, quote, winnest the heart of a laboring man for her later in the year." Winnest the heart. Her strawberry plants will be obtained from the best roots which she has gathered from the woods, and these are to be set in a plot in the garden. Berries from these plants will be harvested later the same year, perhaps a useful backup if the parsnips have failed to win the man of her dreams. July will see the good wife cut off ripe beans with a knife, as well as harvesting hemp and flax, which it will be her responsibility to spin later in the year. Just a little look back in time, 500 Points of Good Husbandry, thanks to Thomas Tusser. And then this next piece was written by the English poet and cleric Robert Herrick. It was a meditation for his mistress. You are a tulip seen today, but dearest, of so short a stay, that where you grew, scarce man can say. You are a lovely July flower, yet one rude wind or milling shower will force you hence, and in an hour. You are a full-spread, fair-set vine, and can with tendrils love entwine, yet dried before you distill your wine. You are a dainty violet, yet withered before you can be set within the virgin's coronet. You are the queen, all flowers among, but die you must, fair maid, ere long, as he, the maker of this song. It's time to grow that garden library with today's book, The Pollinator Victory Garden by Kim Eierman. This book came out in January of this year, and the subtitle is Win the War on Pollinator Decline with Ecological Gardening. attract and support bees, beetles, butterflies, bats, and other pollinators. And Peter Nelson, director of the Pollinators film, said this about Kim's book. The Pollinator Victory Garden is a book for these times. Kim empowers readers with ideas, direction, and the inspiration they need to create beautiful and eco-friendly habitats for many different pollinators. Creating healthy, diverse, and chemical-free habitats are essential steps in solving pollinator decline, and the Pollinator Victory Garden guides you toward creating your own lovely garden habitat. And Kim is the perfect person to have written this book. She's an environmental horticulturist and landscape designer, and she specializes in ecological landscapes and native plants. And she's also the founder of Eco Beneficial, a horticulture consulting and communications company in Westchester County, New York. And you can also find Kim teaching at the New York Botanical Garden, at the Brooklyn Botanic Garden, at the Native Plant Center, at the Rutgers Home Gardener School, and she also teaches many advanced education classes for master gardeners. This book is 160 pages of ideas and information to support pollinators and help the environment. And it's absolutely lovely. In fact, Kim's book was one of the books that made it into my stack of books that I brought with me up here to the cabin. And I'm so glad that I did. You can get a copy of The Pollinator Victory Garden by Kim Eierman and support the show using the Amazon link in today's show notes for around $16. Finally, here's something sweet to revive the little botanic spark in your heart. Back in 2011, in the popular gardening book, The Roots of My Obsession, Bill Kalina, the former executive director of the Coastal Maine Botanical Gardens, wrote this very charming essay. Here's what it said. Yesterday, it happened. With everything finally planted, the weeds temporarily at bay, and the garden refreshed by rains after a long dry stretch, I reached that brief apogee in the arc of the season where I could sit on the bench and just appreciate. It's that magic time of year between the rising cacophony of spring and the slow murmuring descent of autumn, when there is a stillness in my soul. Right now, nothing needs doing. It has been the most frenzied spring yet at the Coastal Maine Botanical Gardens where I work, a season stretching well into summer. We planted just over 29,000 plants and created 4 acres of new gardens. I have laid out so many plants this year that I started seeing them in my sleep, one pot after another, plunked atop the freshly turned earth in endless triangles, stretching off to infinity. In 2019, Bill Kalina was named the F. Otto Haas Executive Director of the University of Pennsylvania's Morris Arboretum. So he's been on his job a little over a year now. He started last year on July 8th, and he took over the spot that had been held by Paul Meyer, who had served the Arboretum for 43 years, 28 of them as Executive Director. Thanks for listening to The Daily Gardener, and remember, for a happy, healthy life, garden every day. The Daily Gardener is produced in lovely Wyoming, Minnesota with the help of Paige Mance, Brooke Bierbaum, Kiana Rayleigh, Maddie Doyle, Natalie Decker, and Eric Begay. You can find The Daily Gardener on all your favorite social media. You can follow the show on Instagram, and listeners always have a standing invitation to join the free Facebook group for the show. Just search for Daily Gardener Community the next time you're on Facebook and request to join. All the the stories and books that are featured on the show can be found over at thedailygardener.org, thedailygardener.org. And while you're there, be sure to sign up for my free Friday newsletter. Last but not least, you can share your own gardener greetings on the show by emailing me at jennifer@thedailygardener.org. I'm your host, Jennifer Evelyn, and as always, have a great day in the garden, and we'll see you tomorrow.